Friday, it's 5 days after the marathon. I did promise in the last video that I would give a little bit more of a recap. Once I got home, obviously quite a few days have passed and I thought I'd better get around to doing it before I forget everything. So I guess I'll go through it here. Okay, where to start? I realised in the previous video as well that I didn't actually mention how big of a PB it was. It was 14 minutes. Previous personal best was 2:49 from the Ballarat Marathon last year. So that's what, 17 to 18 months between, and I've taken 14 minutes off my personal best. So I think that's a pretty big improvement. So I got down to the start 50 minutes before the race, did a 10-minute jog, probably starting from about 35 minutes out. I only got to do 2 strides, which was fine. I wasn't too fast. Dumped my stuff there and then got on the start line and I was next to Jess Stenson. Felt like a bit of an imposter there. She is, if you don't know, Jess Stenson is the reigning Commonwealth Games marathon champion. Yeah, really nervous on the start line. I was just trying to take deep breaths. I looked down at my heart rate. At one point, just standing on the start line, it was at 115 BPM, which is pretty much what it usually is during an easy run. So yeah, the nerves were definitely there. The gun went and yeah, I can't really remember much about getting off the start line. I kind of just took off as I usually do and looking for those packs to form. I think I was a little bit ahead of most of the people that I ended up running with. So I found myself alone after about maybe 1.5 kilometers. There was a guy that I was kind of with, but then he pushed on and looked like he was chasing after the group in front of us. Yeah, it was a really big group and I was tempted to go and push up to it. But yeah, I just knew that it wasn't sustainable, even that early in the race. I just felt if I push hard here and go with that group, they're going to be going too fast and I'm going to have to push even harder to get to them. So I just eased back, waited for a few other people to catch me. I think you can see there in kilometre 3 on my splits, I ran a 3:43 kilometres, so I didn't ease off that much. It was just a little bit, got caught from behind. And the people that caught me from behind kind of just sat on me for a while and I really didn't want to be at the front of the group. So I kind of just tried to ease off even more and it took a little while until eventually a few guys came around and yeah, I just sat back in. I went through the 5k split it said on my watch 18:19, but I suspect that 5k split was maybe a little early. I think it was a bit out of place because we were definitely running faster in the second 5k and that gave me 18:32. So I think what's happened is they've put the first 5k split a little early and it's made the second 5k a bit long. But anyway, through 10k in just under 37 minutes. I felt a little bit surgy at times. I'm not sure if people were actually surging or if it was just me. I was thinking about this all week. I had this really overwhelming feeling of wanting to slow down, but I knew that if I did that, I'd be by myself. And so having the group running with me, it felt like they were constantly surging. But I think what it was is just my body wanting just to ease off just a little bit. But the group wouldn't allow me to do that. And I'm happy that the group was there because if I was running by myself, I would have run more slowly. But I obviously could sustain what I ended up running. It's just that my body wanted me to go a little bit slower. But yeah, having the group there kind of just teased that extra few percent out of me, I think. It was quite difficult because of that, because I never really felt like I was comfortable. And I think that comes down to, in the past, I think my previous marathon personal best of 2:49, when I ran that intensity was just below LT1. Whereas I think now, having brought my time down 14 minutes, I'm running just above LT1. And so I'm kind of in that threshold zone, the bottom part of the threshold zone. And so the feeling of marathon pace, it's different now. It's not the same high-end zone 2 where it does feel really sustainable, like you are kind of just chugging along and you can keep that going for a long time. It's now getting into the intensity where you are actually accumulating just a little bit of lactate and it feels a bit uncomfortable when you know that you've got more than 2.5 hours of running to do. Yeah, that was a bit of a change, but I just knew based on what I've done in training that I should be able to sustain it. Heart rate numbers looked really good. It's just that mechanically it did feel a little bit hard. But anyway, the group was pretty good. I didn't get clipped once from behind. I did hang at the back for a lot of it, which was a good and a bad thing. I definitely got caught out a few times, especially after drink stations. I'd look up and there'd be one guy in front of me, but then it'd be really strung out to everyone else. And so I'd have to really surge and pick up just to get back onto the kind of main group. Apart from one point at about maybe 18 kilometers in at a drink station where a guy chopped straight in front of me and I ran straight up the back of him. Other than that, it was a pretty smooth ride. I enjoyed having company out there, especially with such a big group. I don't think I would have run anywhere near as fast if I was running by myself or if it was with a smaller group. I noticed when we were going north along Beaconsfield Parade that we did slow a little bit, but I think that's just the guys at the front got a little bit of wind and I was able to tuck in behind, so it felt really comfortable. But then when we turned at the end, it did feel like it was quite an effort just to get back up, because obviously you're not getting as much of a draft when you've got a slight tailwind. So we did pick up. And I think we were chugging along at maybe 3:37 a kilometre when we were heading south. Went through halfway in 1:17:33. I don't know, I wasn't really paying attention to the splits that much up until that point, but when we came through there I thought, okay, that's pretty much 2:35 dead pace. I should be able to pick up off that. I mean, I wasn't feeling amazing at that point, but heart rate again was still looking really, really good. I just thought, yeah, once we get to the kind of like 30k and I can just unleash, I can really let myself go, then I'll start to feel like I'm close enough. And I think a lot of the just not feeling great was more down to this anxiety of thinking there's still a really long way to go, and the feeling of impatience. You want to be at the point of the race where there's action about to happen, and you quickly realise once you've done a few marathons that the marathon for the most part is quite boring. And you've got to be comfortable with that boredom. So anyway, just before the turn at the most southerly point of the course, everything was going really well. Heart rate was still below threshold. And then we turned and I kind of got caught behind quite a few people. And I thought, oh, this is okay. It feels like we've slowed, but that's just because the others in front are hitting the wind. And I wasn't paying attention for a few hundred meters, and then I looked up and we were completely strung out. The guys in front of me had kind of lost touch with the group in front, and the group in front was just single file. So I had to quickly race around and put in a fair surge just to try and get back on near the front of this single file, because I knew that I wanted to be with the people who were running strong, who were running on. I didn't want to get caught behind the people that were flagging. I think it was at about 27k that my heart rate eventually went above threshold, and at that point I was just thinking, well, that's fine. That's a bonus. I was planning to get to at least 25k with my heart rate below threshold. I thought, if I can do that, I know I can sustain it to the finish, and I'd done that. So it was a bit of a bonus really. But then I really did have to start pushing to pick up to get with this group. And then Caitlin handed me a bottle. It didn't go down particularly well. I took 2 bottles from Caitlin, one at about 14k's and the second one at 28k's. I didn't get as much water fluid down as I would have liked in both of those. It was just taking me a really long time to get anything in, and I started to feel a little bit bloated when I was doing that. In hindsight, I probably should have just pushed through and taken on a bit more, even though it probably would have been a bit uncomfortable. I'm just glad it wasn't a hot day. The temperature remained pretty low. I did start to feel a little bit warm towards the latter end, but that's probably just because I did start to get a little bit dehydrated. But anyway, I got through maybe half of the second bottle, so that's probably like 300 mils. And then, yeah, the group was really breaking up by this point. When we turned off the seafront area, there was a bit of a rise, and I just lost contact with the front of my group. A lot of those guys were really, really pushing on though. I know that the guy who was probably responsible for stringing everyone out, he ended up running 2:34:20, something like that. And then there was one other guy, I think, who broke 2:35, but everyone else kind of folded. So getting through 30k felt really good. The band was playing, and it was the first point where I started to get those kind of feelings of, you're going to do this today. You're going to run something good here. It was kind of one of those, I don't know, it's just that feeling that brings a big smile on your face, and you get a little bit choked up, but then you quickly have to catch yourself and say, it's not done yet. You have to keep running here. You've got 12 kilometers more to go. You've got to keep pushing. The hard part starts now, so don't get ahead of yourself. And then, I basically got back onto this group, caught Sarah Klein and 4 other guys. And then we turned left onto St Kilda Road and we ran straight up the back of the half marathoners. Now, they must have been people that were running somewhere between maybe 80 and 85 minutes for the half marathon based on the timing. So it didn't make it particularly easy to get around them. I mean, if it was further back, maybe we would have had even bigger crowds. But because we weren't running much faster than them, they seemed to get in your way more. So I was kind of losing track of this group that I was trying to hang on to, and everything, it just started to splinter. But I could pick out Sarah Klein, and then I got a really, really bad stitch, probably at around 31.5 kilometers. It was kind of high up, just under my rib cage. So I was trying to massage it, and I just remembered what I'd heard Nick Earl say before about getting these kind of stitches. So shout out to Nick, to just take a deep breath, count the number of steps. I couldn't remember the exact instructions. I just knew I needed to change my breathing pattern. So I kind of took a deep breath, counted to 3, and then took a big long exhale. I did this for about 20 or 30 seconds, and that seemed to take care of it. So I was pushing through it for maybe a couple of minutes, and then I did this strategy while massaging it, and it went away. And it was, once it did that, I was able to push back on, get back onto Sarah Klein, and I started to feel really, really good. Still dodging through all the half marathoners, but I was happy to kind of have some momentum behind me and feel like, yeah, I'm not limited here by anything. My body's feeling good. I'm going to push on to the finish line. And I got through 34K, and typically that's been in the marathons that I've done. I know that if I'm feeling okay there, I can go for it and I can get everything out of myself. Probably a mistake this time around, given that I'd already been running at quite a high intensity. But anyway, I pushed on. I went past Sarah Klein, tried to give her a bit of a rev up and said, come on, duck in behind me, let's go. And she did for maybe 50 meters or so, and then she kind of had to just let go. I think maybe I was just pushing on a little bit too hard at that point, and she recognized that no, it's not sustainable. I probably should have eased off a little bit too. But then we got to the end of St Kilda Road, turned left, down a little hill, which was horrible. I hated having my rhythm broken like that. Even if it was downhill, I just felt really, really awkward running down. I'd say I probably ran an extra 50 meters in this section, in this kilometer, just trying to get around people. I couldn't take the shortest line at all. Quite a few half marathoners, when I'd come past them, they'd almost surge to try and get back past me again. Obviously they couldn't see my bib and didn't realise that I was actually a marathoner. I wasn't racing them. But quite a few people did that, and it was really irritating. So we went under a tunnel, came back out. GPS was completely scrambled from the tunnel, so I looked down and it said I was doing 3:29 a kilometre for that split. And I knew that wasn't right. And then, yeah, this was the hard part of the course, really, where you come under the tunnel and turn onto the tan area, and it is just a long uphill drag for about 1,200 metres. There was a guy that was 20 metres in front of me. His name was Jordan Mayston, and I looked at the results after the race, and he ended up running 2:34.50 something. So he broke 2:35. So if I could finish the way that he did, I could have broken 2:35, but there was no way. He finished like an absolute train. I looked at some of his splits and he was breaking 3:30 for some of the kilometres there. But other than him, I was pretty much by myself all the way up this hill. At the very top, I caught a guy called Nawaz Kalfin. He looked like he was completely done. He was shuffling along. And when I caught him, I tried to give him again a rev up of like, come on, let's go, kind of stick with me. And he did. He totally responded, which I mean shows that he's quite tough, mentally quite tough to come back from that. He looked like he was completely done, but he somehow found something. So he put in a bit of a surge actually, or maybe I'm just terrible at running hills, and he got about a 10 metre gap on me again. But then I came back past him on the downhill, and I was thinking, yep, I'm in a good rhythm here, I can do this. But as soon as we got off the little slight downhill, I just didn't have that same kind of power that I had maybe 3 kilometres earlier. And then 2 other guys came back past me, and Nawaz had tacked onto the back of them. And I thought, no, I'm just going to have to fight for this. Even though I'm not feeling this rhythm, I'm just going to have to force it and stay with these guys, because I was just looking at my watch and I was trying to do the calculations and my brain wasn't working particularly well. But I saw the 39k marker and I knew I had about 12 minutes to run under 2:36. I think I went through 39k somewhere close to 2:24, and I was doing the maths thinking, all right, I've got to run 12 minutes for, it's not 3 kilometres, it's 3.2. So that means I've probably got to run somewhere close to 3:45 2:35 a kilometre to do this. And I looked at my watch for the current split and it was about that. So I thought, I've got to sustain this. I've got to go with these guys. If I drop, then I'm not going to break 2:36. And I kept falling into these, I don't know what it was. It was almost like I'd fall asleep. I'd just lose concentration and I'd lose 5 meters on the guys. And then I'd have to force myself again to just pick it back up and just get back on them. And this happened 3 or 4 times within the space of maybe a kilometre and a half. I just stuck with it. It felt easy at times and then it felt really, really hard. And then I knew that if I could just get to that 41k marker and I had maybe 4.5 minutes up my sleeve, that I would do it. I did that. I think it was 2:31:30 when I came through 41k's. It was a slight descent coming off Flinders Street, and I heard "Go Sarah" behind me, and I thought, oh, she's responded here. She's coming back. I thought her day was done when I dropped her at 34k, but no, she fought on. She was really tough. So she came flying back past me. The other guys dropped me here as well. I couldn't go on the downhills. So I kind of just kept Sarah in my sights. She probably got 10 to 15 meters on me at one stage, but I just had to keep forcing myself to regain momentum. The rhythm that my body wanted to fall in was much slower than the pace I needed, and I just had to keep kick-starting myself again. Yeah, we got into the stadium and it's just instinct. You see the finish line and you somehow find an extra gear. And as soon as we got onto that matting, I picked it up. It was a little bit confusing because you had people crossing into different lanes. There was one guy who was in the half marathon, went over to the marathon section, and then he cut Sarah off, and which kind of knocked her into me as we rounded a bend. And I just didn't want to get in her way. I thought, she's going to come through, she's going to pick up however much it was. I think it's about $15,000 per second. I really don't want to trip her up. So yeah, I was really cautious of that, and I felt really bad that we made contact, but I don't think it was my fault. I just kept looking. I looked at my watch a couple of times and just saw that, yeah, this is going to be really tight. So I just had to find, again, an extra gear. Just, you can see me in the footage where I'm basically, it's almost like I'm looking down at my legs and trying to use my arms to lift my legs up. I mean, it probably wasn't particularly fast, but it was as hard as I could go. Yeah, and I got there, sub 2:36. I mean, it's not the absolute ideal day. An A+ performance would have been something maybe 2 minutes faster, but I'm happy that I didn't let myself give in and settle for 2:36, which is what it looked like it was going to be at one stage. I would have been so annoyed at myself if I'd let that happen. It's really easy to be somewhat complacent in the moment because you're in so much discomfort. You just want it to be over. Your brain is almost telling you you've done enough. It's trying to just convince you that it'll be fine. Who cares if you run 2:36 or 2:35? It's not that big of a deal. But I know just from previous experience how annoyed I get at myself when I don't really give it everything. It's not like you can just go back and do it the next day or the day after that. You only get one shot at these things. So you have to make sure that you're going to feel satisfied afterwards. Even if your brain is telling you in the moment, you will be satisfied. It's fine. So I'm really happy that I fought on and got everything I could out of my own fitness. I think maybe I could have executed a little bit different, maybe not push so hard up St Kilda Road when I had the stitch, because I think they were actually my fastest splits that I ran. I think the 10k section between 25 and 35k is my fastest 10k of the race. Taking out the hill, it's not exactly the fastest part of the course, especially considering all the traffic on course, and you're kind of running back north, getting a little bit of wind. You've got a hill to come up when you're coming off the kind of waterfront area. So yeah, I probably pushed maybe just a touch too fast. I got ahead of myself a little bit, thinking that I was home, thinking that I had this momentum, I could sustain it. I just didn't account for what the hill was going to do to me first of all, and then I probably just went a touch too early. But in all, I estimate that I probably lost maybe 25 to 30 seconds over the last 6k based on the pace that I was doing prior to it. So it wouldn't have made a difference. I would have run 2:35, whether it was an absolutely ideal performance or what I ended up running. So yeah, 2:35.56. And I'm aware of it myself that in terms of my 10k personal best of 32.24, if you look at some of the race calculators or the predictors, they say based on that time I should be running 2:29 to 2:31, somewhere in that range. But I have always found that those predictors severely overrate people's endurance. People's marathons, they don't usually line up that well with their shorter distance times on those predictors. Some people do. I mean, I think if you've been doing 100 miles a week for years on end, that they probably will, and that should be the target, I guess. But for me, it's never been the case, and I don't know a lot of people who actually can live up to those calculators. But if I do my own conversion, when I ran 2:49, my personal best for the 10K was 34:47. So a similar conversion based on my 32:24 would have had me running a 2:39 for an equivalent performance. So I think this was a more than 3-minute better performance than my previous marathon in terms of how well I've converted to the marathon. So obviously I'm moving in the right direction. I'm getting stronger. I'm able to perform at those longer distances much better than I have in the past, not only in overall time, but in actually getting closer to my potential. I'm obviously still a better 10K runner than I am marathon runner, but to me, the marathon is the kind of ultimate challenge. If my marathon was already my best distance, then I'd have nowhere to go. I'd have no room to move in terms of improvement. So I don't necessarily look at it as a bad thing. I think that I'm getting closer to actually living up to that potential. And I still want to improve at the shorter distances as well. So to me, 2:35, I would have liked a little bit faster, just so that I felt like I was within touching distance of that sub 2:30. It does seem like still a fair chunk. If I had have run under 2:34, it would have looked like it was maybe achievable for the next one. Again, maybe it will still be achievable for the next one, but I'm obviously going to have to improve my fitness by quite a bit. I don't think I can get by on just doing a better marathon block and improving my endurance. I think I'm going to have to improve my anaerobic threshold first of all, get faster at those shorter distances, as well as improve my endurance in order to break 2:30.